Excuse me, sir. What are you doing out here?
Just waiting for my bus. Why?
This isn't a bus stop. What's that in your hand?
My walking stick. I'm blind.
You're looking straight at me, and that looks like a weapon.
I'm not looking at you, sir. I just hear your voice.
Well, we got a call about a man with what looked like a weapon, and you matched the description.
Officer Carl Brennan had worked for the Baltimore Police Department for 5 years, and during those 5 years, his record told a story his supervisors chose not to face. 13 complaints filed against him, 12 tied to stopping black men in business areas for what Brennan called suspicious hanging around, a man standing outside a bank questioned for planning a robbery, a man sitting on a stoop eating lunch detained for trespassing, a man checking his phone near a jewelry store searched for scouting the place. Every complaint ended the same way, mandatory de-escalation training that Brennan attended but never used. One Friday afternoon in downtown Baltimore, his habit of turning peaceful black men into threats collided with someone who literally could not see him at all. And that moment would end Brennan's career, cost the city $1 million, and force a department to face the reports they'd been pushing aside for half a decade. A black man in his mid-40s, Jerome Washington, was sitting on a public bench outside a CVS, waiting for the Route 3 bus. His white folding cane leaned against his leg, his red baseball cap blocking the January sunlight from his face. No crime, no trouble, no violation, just a blind man using public transit after his weekly physical therapy appointment. But Officer Brennan viewed the scene through a mindset so skewed by bias that he mistook a federally recognized mobility tool for a possible weapon, treated blindness as some kind of trick, and turned a simple wait for a bus into a confrontation that would wreck his own future. Before we go on, where are you watching from? And if this is your first time here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Stories like this matter, and your support helps us keep bringing real situations into the open. Baltimore, Maryland, the corner of Pratt Street and Light Street in the center of the downtown business district, where tall buildings stretch long shadows across sidewalks filled with lunch hour crowds and afterwork travelers. The area buzzes with life during business hours, then settles into a quieter pace by mid-afternoon when most employees return to their offices and the streets belong to shoppers, tourists, and people running errands. It was 3:45 on a Friday afternoon in January. The sun hung low, bright yet lacking warmth, the kind of winter day where the light makes a promise it can't keep. The temperature sat around 38 degrees. People moved quickly, shoulders tight against the cold, focused on reaching their next stop. Jerome Washington had lost his vision 11 years earlier. 11 years since a construction accident destroyed his optic nerves, sending him into total darkness before he even turned 35. No light, no silhouettes, no shapes at all, complete blindness. So he rebuilt his life from that darkness. He spent 18 months in rehabilitation, learning orientation and mobility skills. He mastered his white cane. He learned to use Baltimore's bus routes by counting stops and listening for audio cues. He trained himself to cook, clean, and manage his apartment alone. Jerome worked as a phone-based customer service representative for an insurance company, a job that needed patience, clear speaking, and focus, none of which required vision. That afternoon, he'd taken a half-day off for his weekly physical therapy appointment for chronic back pain caused by the same accident that took his sight. The session had gone well. His therapist's office was 3 blocks from the bus stop. He walked the route many times, his cane sweeping ahead, the path etched into his memory. He reached the bench 5 minutes before his bus, so he sat down, folded his cane to make it easier to hold, and waited. His phone was in his pocket, playing a podcast through bone conduction headphones that left his ears open to hear traffic and footsteps, a safety tool blind pedestrians use to stay aware. He was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what thousands of others do each day, waiting for public transit with the mobility aid protected by federal law and recognized by most people. But Officer Kyle Brennan didn't recognize anything except his own conclusions. Brennan had worked downtown patrol for 4 of his 5 years with Baltimore PD. His supervisors described him as extremely alert, an officer who reported more suspicious behavior than anyone else on his shift. But extremely alert was just another way of saying he profiled people. In 5 years, Brennan created 13 official complaints. 12 of them followed the same pattern. A black man outside a Wells Fargo branch, clearly waiting for someone. Brennan stopped him, demanded ID, accused him of plotting a crime. The man was a bank customer waiting for his wife. Complaint filed, dismissed with a note praising officer initiative. A black man sitting on church steps eating a sandwich. Brennan questioned him for trespassing even though church steps are public access. The man was a church member taking his lunch break. Complaint filed, closed after Brennan completed community relations training. A black man standing near a pawn shop checking his phone. Brennan detained and searched him, certain he was planning a theft. The man was a delivery driver checking his GPS. Complaint filed, resolved with a sensitivity training requirement. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Black man in public space. Brennan imagines criminal intent. Brennan escalates. Complaint filed, training assigned. No real consequences, no discipline that mattered. Brennan's training sergeant had flagged him for aggressive profiling during probation, but ultimately approved him because Baltimore PD's staffing shortage meant they couldn't risk losing bodies who passed basic exams. So Brennan kept patrolling, his biases unchecked, his pattern unchallenged, his supervisors stacking his complaints in dusty folders. That afternoon, dispatch received an anonymous call. Suspicious male near Pratt and Light, possibly armed, dark clothing, red hat, sitting alone with what looked like a pipe or club. Black male, mid-40s, appeared to be watching the CVS. Brennan responded within minutes. This was the kind of call he loved, proactive action, stopping crime before it started. He didn't question the caller's judgment. He didn't consider other explanations. He simply reacted with the assumption that if someone thought there was danger, then danger had to be there. He pulled his patrol car to the curb and scanned the street. There on a red bench outside the CVS, a black man, red baseball cap, dark sunglasses, blue striped shirt, holding what looked like a white rod or stick. Brennan's mind processed the scene using his usual lens. Suspicious person, possible weapon, needs investigation. He didn't notice the reflective bands on the cane. He didn't recognize the solid white color used nationwide to signal blindness. He didn't consider that a man sitting calmly with no threatening movements might not be a danger. He saw what he always saw when he looked at black men in public places. Someone who didn't belong, someone doing something wrong, someone who needed to be controlled. Brennan stepped out of his vehicle and approached with his right hand hovering near his service weapon. Do you think officers should face automatic suspension after 10 similar complaints? Tell us your answer below. Jerome heard the footsteps approaching from his left, heavy boots striking concrete, a determined rhythm. He turned his head slightly toward the sound, a natural human reflex to acknowledge someone entering your space even when you can't see them. Excuse me, sir, what are you doing out here? Jerome recognized the tone instantly, authority mixed with suspicion. He'd experienced it before, usually from security guards who assumed blind people must be lost or confused. Not from police, just waiting for my bus. Why, this isn't a bus stop. What's that in your hand? Jerome's forehead tightened beneath his sunglasses. Officer, this is definitely a bus stop. The Route 3 stops right here every 20 minutes. And this, he raised the cane gently, is my walking stick. I'm blind. Brennan studied Jerome's face. Jerome's head was turned toward him, the dark sunglasses reflecting Brennan's own outline. Someone with no training about blindness, it looked like direct eye contact. You're looking straight at me and that looks like a weapon. Jerome let out a short involuntary laugh, not humor but the shocked response to something so absurd it didn't register at first. I'm not looking at you, sir, I'm just listening to your voice. I can't see anything. These sunglasses aren't for style, I'm completely blind. This is a white mobility cane, it's how I move through the world safely. Brennan's jaw tightened. In his experience, people who claimed disabilities were often lying, pretending, trying to get sympathy or avoid trouble. And this man, Jerome, was turning his head, responding to sounds, behaving in ways Brennan assumed blind people shouldn't. Well, we got a call about a man with what looked like a weapon and you matched the description. A weapon? Jerome's voice carried disbelief mixed with rising fear. Officer, this is a collapsible white cane with reflective tape. It's registered with the National Federation of the Blind. It's literally built to help people with vision loss move independently and signal to others that we can't see. If you actually look at it, you'll see it's not a weapon. But Brennan wasn't looking at the cane. He was watching Jerome, analyzing his movements, certain this was an act designed to dodge scrutiny. I need to see some identification and I need you to place that stick down on the ground. Jerome's heartbeat quickened. He'd heard stories from other blind friends, stories about police encounters gone wrong, stories of mobility aids being taken or broken, stories of blind people forced to move without their canes, left unsafe and disoriented. He never believed it would happen to him. Officer, I'm willing to show identification, but I cannot put down my cane. It's a medical device. It's protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. I need it to keep track of where I am to avoid hazards. Asking me to set it aside is like telling someone in a wheelchair to stand up and walk. Brennan's hand moved to his radio. Sir, I'm not going to ask again. Put down the stick. And I'm telling you, I legally cannot follow that order. I'm blind. This is my mobility tool. I have paperwork. I have ID, but I will not give up my ability to move safely. This is where ignorance turns into danger. Officer Carl Brennan had never received full disability training. He'd sat through a 2-hour PowerPoint during academy class, but it covered physical disabilities like wheelchairs and hearing aids, not blindness. He never learned that white canes are federally protected. He never learned that asking someone to give up their mobility device is both unlawful and cruel. All Brennan understood was his training about control and compliance, the belief that obedience equals safety and hesitation equals threat. And Jerome Washington sitting on a bench defending his right to hold his cane registered in Brennan's mind as resistance. Stand up, hands where I can see them. Jerome didn't rise, not out of stubbornness, but for safety. Standing without his cane meant losing his orientation. He couldn't see where Brennan was. He couldn't identify obstacles nearby. He didn't know if there were stairs, poles, or other dangers. Standing without his cane meant he could get hurt. Officer, please listen to me. I'm blind. I cannot see you. I cannot see anything around me. If I stand up without my cane, I don't know where I am. I could fall. I could run into something. I'm not refusing to cooperate. I'm trying to stay safe. Brennan keyed his radio. Dispatch, need backup at Pratt and Light. Male subject refusing commands, possible weapon. Jerome heard those words and felt cold spread through his body. Weapon. Officer, you're turning nothing into something dangerous. I'm a blind man waiting for... This is my cane, you're escalating. A second patrol car arrived within 90 seconds. Officer Maria Santos stepped out, a 16-year veteran who'd worked with Brennan before and learned to question his judgment. She approached and instantly saw what Brennan somehow missed, a white collapsible cane with reflective markings, a man wearing dark glasses with small white dots at the temples. A common sign of low vision, a man sitting calmly with no threatening behavior, no danger cues, just someone clearly scared and confused. Santos had completed advanced disability training the previous year. She recognized exactly what was happening. Brennan, what's the situation? Anonymous call reported possible weapon. Subject refusing to comply, won't put down the stick he's holding. Santos stepped closer to Jerome, her voice steady and respectful. Sir, I'm Officer Santos. Can you tell me your name? Jerome turned toward her voice, relieved to hear someone who sounded less confrontational. My name is Jerome Washington. I'm blind. I was sitting here waiting for the Route 3 bus to take me home after my physical therapy appointment. This officer walked up to me and ordered me to put down my mobility cane. I told him I can't do that because I need it to navigate. He said it was a weapon. It's not a weapon, it's a white cane. I'm registered with the NFB. I have my ID. I just want to go home. Santos examined the cane closely. White shaft, black handle, reflective red bands, evenly spaced, collapsible joints. Everything about it clearly showed mobility tool, not weapon. Brennan, Santos said quietly, her tone tight with controlled anger. That's a white cane. He's blind. This is a federally protected mobility device. He keeps looking at me. He's orienting to your voice. That's what people do when they can't see. Blind individuals turn their heads toward sound. That's not sight, that's hearing. Santos turned back to Jerome. Mr. Washington, I'm sorry this happened. You're not in any trouble. You have every legal right to wait here for your bus. Jerome released a slow breath. Thank you, Officer Santos. Santos turned toward Brennan, her voice dropping to an angry whisper. Do you have any idea what you just did? You stopped a blind man for holding his cane. You labeled a mobility device a weapon. You demanded he give up the one tool that lets him move independently. Brennan's cheeks reddened. The call said the call was wrong and you didn't confirm before escalating. You called backup on a disabled man waiting for public transit. A woman who'd been watching from inside the CVS walked outside. Officer, I see this man here twice a week. He always waits for that bus. He's blind. Everyone around here knows him. What just happened is discrimination. Several other bystanders had gathered. Phones raised, recording. The evidence built in real time. Video showing Jerome sitting peacefully. Audio capturing him explaining he was blind again and again. Footage of Brennan ignoring him. Santos radioed for a supervisor. Sergeant Dennis Cole arrived within 8 minutes. He was a 23-year veteran who'd seen every kind of officer mistake and had no patience for ones rooted in ignorance or prejudice. He spoke with Santos, checked the cane himself, talked to witnesses and listened to Jerome's account. Then he walked to Brennan wearing a look cold enough to freeze the air. Badge and service weapon, administrative leave, starting now. Brennan's eyes went wide. Sergeant, I responded to a weapons call. You stopped a blind man for using his white cane. You labeled a legally protected disability tool as a weapon. You insisted he give up the thing that lets him move safely. You caused an ADA violation now recorded by several witnesses with video proof. Badge, weapon, now. Brennan passed them over, his fingers shaking as it finally hit him that his career had ended over something he still didn't completely grasp. Cole faced Jerome. Mr. Washington, I'm Sergeant Cole. On behalf of the Baltimore Police Department, I'm sorry, this should never have happened. Officer Brennan failed to recognize a disability aid that any trained officer should instantly know. We'll run a full review. You may leave once your bus comes, and if you choose to file complaints or take legal action, we'll fully cooperate. Jerome rose slowly, his cane steadying him. Sergeant, I respect your professionalism, he said, but you need to understand this from my side. I was scared. I couldn't see anything going on. I heard backup called. I heard possible weapon. I'm a blind black man sitting alone and your officer treated me like a threat. I know my rights. I know the ADA, and I know this was illegal. I will be taking legal action. Should white canes be required in police training recognition courses before officers graduate the academy? Tell me your thoughts. By that night, the story had blown up across social media and the news cycle. Blind Baltimore man detained over mobility cane. Officer labels white cane a weapon. Disabled man ordered to surrender aid. ADA advocates condemn BPD after officer stops blind rider at bus stop. Dozens of bystanders posted their recordings. The videos captured everything: Jerome calmly sitting on the bench, Brennan storming toward him, the exchange where Jerome repeated his disability explanation, Brennan's refusal to accept what he was hearing, the backup call, Santos stepping in, the crowd gathering. National disability groups reacted instantly. The National Federation of the Blind released a blistering statement. The American Council of the Blind demanded Brennan's firing and department-wide changes. The National Disability Rights Network offered Jerome an attorney, though he didn't need the help. Within 24 hours, he hired a civil rights lawyer experienced in ADA abuse cases. The lawsuit listed Officer Kyle Brennan, the supervisors who ignored his 13 earlier complaints, and Baltimore PD itself. The allegations were extensive: disability discrimination under the ADA, unlawful detention without suspicion or cause, failure to reasonably accommodate a disability, federal civil rights violations, intentional emotional harm, and the department's deliberate neglect of Brennan's known pattern of targeting. The filing included Brennan's full discipline file, 13 official complaints in 5 years, 12 involving black men in public areas. All dismissed with training that was never monitored, none resulting in real consequences. Baltimore City lawyers reviewed the situation and reached a single unavoidable truth: the city had no possible defense. Body camera footage showed Brennan stopping a blind man holding a clearly recognizable white cane. Audio caught Jerome calmly describing his disability again and again. Video revealed Brennan pushing the situation even after those explanations. Witnesses backed up every part. The ADA violations were basic and unmistakable. The civil rights issues were equally obvious. 14 months later, the case settled. $1 million was awarded to Jerome Washington, one of the largest disability discrimination payouts in Maryland's history. Officer Carl Brennan was fired 9 weeks after the event. His dismissal letter was detailed and absolute. Officer Brennan detained a disabled man for using a federally protected mobility tool. He showed a basic lack of understanding of disability accommodations despite available instruction. He treated a white cane, the universal marker of blindness, as a potential threat. He escalated a harmless situation, forcing supervisor involvement and creating serious legal risk for the department. His repeated pattern of bias stops, proven by 13 complaints over 5 years, displayed an inability to serve without prejudice. Employment ended immediately with no option to appeal. Brennan's name was placed in the National Decertification Database. His policing career was permanently over. In every state, he attempted to challenge the decision through his union. The union viewed the bodycam clip showing him calling a white cane a weapon and refused to fight the termination. There was no defense possible. Brennan released a short statement through his attorney. "I failed to correctly recognize Mr. Washington's mobility aid and did not properly apply disability training. I accept responsibility." Jerome Washington responded with force and clarity. "Officer Brennan didn't fail to recognize my cane. He ignored me when I identified it for him several times. He chose to see a weapon because he already saw me as dangerous. That's not a training issue. That's a character issue supported by a department that overlooked 13 complaints." Baltimore PD was hit with intense criticism from many sides. How had Brennan stayed on duty with 13 complaints? Why was disability training optional instead of required? What protections existed against officers with known discriminatory patterns? Internal Affairs launched a broad review. Their results confirmed what advocates had said for years. Complaints noted but not seriously explored. Training assigned but never checked for completion. Supervisors who valued keeping officers over keeping residents safe. No required education on disability law despite Baltimore having a large disabled community. New reforms were announced 11 months later. Mandatory full disability awareness training before solo patrol. An automatic investigation triggered after 3 similar complaints within 2 years. Real-time bodycam checks for all encounters involving disability accommodations. Formal partnerships with disability rights groups for continuous officer instruction. Longer field training periods with improved evaluation standards. Jerome Washington testified before the Baltimore City Council. His words were steady, precise, and deeply moving. "I've been blind for 11 years. I've learned to cook my own meals, manage my home, keep a job, use public transit, and live independently. My white cane allows all of that. It isn't just equipment, it's my freedom. It's my protection, it's federally protected for a reason." Officer Brennan saw it in my hand and decided it was a threat, not because it looked dangerous, but because to him a black man holding anything in public must be dangerous. He paused. "I told him I was blind. I explained what the cane was. I cited the ADA. I stayed calm and polite even though I was scared, and he still called for backup, still demanded I hand over my mobility device. Still created a situation where I genuinely feared for my life. That's not an accident, that's not confusion, that's bias so strong it overrides logic, federal law, and basic humanity." His voice grew firmer. $1 million is a large amount, but it doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't erase the fear of being treated like a criminal for being blind and black. It doesn't return my sense of safety when I wait for a bus. And it doesn't stop the next Carl Brennan from confronting the next blind person who happens to be black and holding a white cane. Why do some officers treat disability tools as suspicious behavior? Share your thoughts. This wasn't about one Friday afternoon. This wasn't about one bus stop. This was about an entire system that allowed Carl Brennan to target people for 5 years with no real consequences. 13 complaints, 12 involving black men, all documented, all stored away, all dismissed with training that fixed nothing. The Americans with Disabilities Act became federal law in 1990. More than 30 years of legal protections, more than 3 decades requiring recognition and accommodation of mobility devices. And still, in 2024, Officer Brennan didn't know a white cane means blindness. He didn't recognize the most universally understood symbol of vision loss. He didn't understand that taking someone's cane is essentially taking their ability to move and stay safe. That isn't personal confusion. That's a systemic failure. That's a failure built into the system itself. Jerome Washington carried the cost. Shaken at a bus stop, treated like a suspect for being blind, pushed into defending his right to basic independence in a public space. Kyle Brennan's policing days are finished. That's accountability. The city paid $1 million. That's the legal victory. But money doesn't erase fear. Firing an officer doesn't heal psychological wounds. And reforms made after 13 complaints are reforms delivered a dozen complaints too late. The real issue is what changes from here. Do departments finally require disability awareness before officers work on their own? Do they finally treat the third complaint with the gravity of the 13th? Do they finally accept that profiling goes beyond race and includes anything that makes someone seem unfamiliar, risky, or other to officers trained to expect danger everywhere? Because if we don't rebuild the system that let Kyle Brennan keep patrolling through 13 complaints, if we don't confront the culture that sees disability as trickery instead of diversity, then we're simply waiting for the next officer, the next harmed citizen, the next blind person stopped for carrying a cane. Comment if you think this should be federal law. Any officer who detains someone for using a federally protected disability tool faces instant permanent decertification. No retraining, no hearings, automatic dismissal. And if you believe these stories matter, if you think awareness creates responsibility and responsibility brings real change, then hit that subscribe button because we're not stopping. We're continuing to uncover these patterns. We are continuing to push for better. We are continuing to stand with the disabled, the vulnerable, the people who deserve to exist without fear. This isn't just about one officer or one blind man.